Hi there. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Aaron Skinner, and I'm going to be talking about a project that I worked on during a Bright internship, which was awarded here through UBC. And for this project, I wanted to build out a data paper, essentially a data set and an associated repository of the data set that I'm working on in my PhD, which is of bird response to agroforestry systems in Colombia. Um, so I'm going to use this as a case study, and I want to talk about whether the data paper has a role in rebuilding trust in science. So before I dive in, I just want to acknowledge that Colombia is an extremely culturally diverse country with over 115 different indigenous groups, and that the data that I'll be talking about today were collected on the territories of more than 10 of these indigenous groups. But before I really dive in here, I want to start with an anecdote from my own research from my master's. So this beautiful species over here on the left is the eastern whippoorwill. Um, and for my master's, I deployed GPS tags over much of the Midwestern United States. And so we recaptured these birds a year later and wanted to understand the lesser known phases of their annual cycle. And so, I'm work through the analysis, write up a paper, and submit it. And to my surprise, the journal said, "Yeah, we're interested. Go ahead and submit your data and the code you use in your analysis." And that's when I started to panic because I knew that I hadn't done a very good job of organizing my data and my code, and I didn't even have a repository. I didn't even know what that word meant. Um, and ultimately, I couldn't reproduce the analysis, the figures that I had just submitted to this journal. Um, and a big reason for that was, as I said, the organizational scheme, and then also the code itself was jumbled, and I didn't have scripts that you could run all the way through. And so eventually, trying every different combination of my code, I was able to reproduce the correct answers and the correct figures. But, this took days of my life and gave me my first gray hairs. So this was exactly what not to do. And this was an important mo learning experience for me. Um, And so the other day, as I was putting together this talk, I went back to look at this repository just to see sort of what it looked like and what state it was in. And the first thing I noticed was I have no idea what these file names even mean. There's all these abbreviations and they don't mean much to me. I'm sure they mean even less to someone who didn't analyze these data. And then I opened up this top CSV file and I found again, all these sort of cryptic column names. I seem to have an affinity for two-letter abbreviations. And so now we've got all these male birds, male eastern whippoorwills with ED scores among others. And so my conclusion from this exercise was, God bless the five people who tried to work with these data. And so I tell this story just to sort of illustrate where I'm coming from, and why this is important to me, and as a joke, but also this is no joke, right? This paper here, published in Science, cited more than 10,000 times, was looking at the reproducibility of the psychological sciences, and they basically found when they went to reproduce the analyses of these 100 or so papers that they looked at, they found that the study that the effect sizes were half that of the original study, which you can see over here by this plot on the right. If they were the same magnitude of effect size, then all the points would be scattered around that 1-to-1 line. But you can see they're much lower. And so ultimately, these authors concluded that only 39% of analyses where they were able to reproduce the original study's result. And so this brings me to the three R's of robust research: repeatable. So this is if you have the same researcher, the same data, and the same method. So this was me with my Eastern whippoorwills. Wasn't able to repeat my own analysis at the beginning. Reproducible is you have a new research team using the same data and the same method to try to reproduce results of someone else's results. And so that's like the study I just mentioned. And then I haven't talked about replicability yet, but in general, it's a new researcher, new data using a similar method. Um, Sorry, and so I'm gonna be arguing today that the data paper does have a role in improving the robust research practices shown here. Um, so first, though, what is a data paper? In its simplest form, it's a data set accompanied by metadata, and generally these metadata strive to define the scope, provide context, have a detailed methodology section, show the steps that were taken for quality assurance and control, and you try to make the paper and the overall repository as easy as possible on the unknown user to sort of facilitate reusability of this data set amongst the scientific community. And over here on the right, I just have one of the most famous data papers that I'm familiar with, the Elton traits data set, which has functional traits for the world's birds and mammal species. So as I mentioned, I'm going to use this data paper that I've been working on in Colombia as an example to get you all familiar with what a data paper looks like, and then we'll come back to the question I posed at the beginning, which is the data paper's role in robust research. So the repository structure for the data paper I've been working on in Colombia, there's 6 CSV files. The first two shown here are the count data, essentially just the abundance of the different bird species at the different locations. And then we have the event covariates next, then two sort of supplementary CSV files that facilitate other people using this data set. But I wouldn't say they're like the most crucial part of the raw data that I'm contributing here. And then finally, the site covariates. And so I thought it made sense to break up this data set into multiple files because I think it makes the structure of the data much clearer. For example, the number of observations, which you can see in this column on the far right, that actually means something now. So for example, on the bottom row, we have the site covariates, and there's 496 observations because we have 496 unique point count locations that were surveyed. Um, I've also provided code to manipulate these CSV files. So the first script there is sort of an exploratory script, and it also shows how you can join these data sets together, what the common columns are that I've called join keys. Um, and then there's a data filtering script as well that walks you through how I went from the bigger count data file, bird PCs all, to the smaller subsetted data file, which is what I would use for analysis, which is just the birds that were observed within the 50-meter point count radius and the time, the 10-minute time period. The version history is all on GitHub, and then there's also several metadata documents that further explain sort of the important nuances in this data set. So as I mentioned, the first or one of the most important parts of the data paper is to define the scope. So that includes the spatial scope, the taxonomic scope, and the temporal scope. I haven't shown the temporal scope here just for time's sake. You also want to provide the context. So, for example, this data paper, this data set was collected as part of a broader project called the Sustainable Cattle Ranching Project. Um, there were six data collectors that contributed to the bird point count data set. These data were collected across five different ecoregions, and these landscapes were very dynamic. So the history of these different sites and these ecoregions is important. So I talk a little bit about that, discuss the land cover and the habitats that we surveyed. So this figure on the right is an example, some satellite imagery from one of our farms where we sampled and you can start to get a feel for what these landscapes really looked like. And then even talking about the geology, the soils, the watersheds, again, just providing context for this data set. There's a big methodology, big detailed methodology section. And for this particular data set, the main focus was highlighting the similarities and differences between these six data collectors. There was no standardized methodology that was sent out to every single data collector. And so each data collector sort of took some of their own liberties to assess the bird communities on these farms. And so that's the key sort of thing that I focused on. But there were similarities as well. Pretty much all the data collectors used 10-minute, 50-meter radius point counts and largely between sunrise and 11 a.m. And then this figure on the right shows some of the an important difference, an example of an important difference. Um, that's looking at the sampling intensity per farm. So that N number is the number of farms that were surveyed, and then on the x-axis you have the point counts per farm. And so you can see, for example, these top two data collectors, Unillanos and UBC, they sampled very few farms, but with a lot of sampling intensity. One of these farms was sampled at 24 different point count locations. And then on the other end of the spectrum, for example, we have CPAV, which pretty much sampled 4 points per farm, all through their data collection efforts. I've also detailed the quality assurance and control steps that I took. So one big step was to compare the species that we observed to their known distributions, both their species ranges and their elevational distributions. And so this is an example here for Tangara cayana. And these black points are within the species range, and then the red points were without or outside of the species range. We standardized the taxonomy. We did several other geospatial checks. And then we also verified the habitat using Google Earth imagery. And then facilitating future use, I think that's really important. And in my opinion, that's sort of what separates the data paper from, for example, the situation that I was in publishing my master's research, where I finally had this paper accepted and couldn't even repeat the analysis that I had done originally. And the repository that I had made was clearly not made with other people actually using it in mind. Here, the idea, your work is judged in part on how reusable your data repository is, how sort of what the potential is for broader impact in the scientific community. So this is just an example figure showing the most abundant species on the left and then the most widespread species on the right. Um, And so, returning to these three R's of robust research, I want to add a fourth here, which is reusability. So, this is a new researcher using the same data set and any methodology that uh, is relevant for their research interests and that your data can help answer. So, to return to the original question, can data papers help rebuild trust in science? I think the answer is yes. I think they can help with repeatability. This is clear documentation for future you. Reproducibility, clear documentation for others. I don't think they're as applicable to replicability, because that would be a different data set. And then I think they help tremendously with reusability. Clear documentation of your data set means that others will want to use your data. Um, and ultimately, I think this is more important now than ever. Uh, Many of our politicians are at war with science. And when we as a scientific community conduct sloppy research, I think we're giving them ammunition, and giving them more of a reason to distrust the science that we conduct. And when people don't trust science, we get crazy conspiracy theories spreading like birds aren't real. And really, I just love this story. So come find me and talk to me if you haven't heard about it, and I'll tell you about it. Um, and yeah, with that, I just want to acknowledge the Bright Internship Program, the Sustainable Cattle Ranching Project, my co-advisors, committee members, my in-country collaborators, lab mates, funders, and the farmers that permitted access to their farms. Thank you so much for your time.